This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews, or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you the coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hey there, How To listeners. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about a story coming up a little later. It's from one of our partners, SAP. AI comes at you fast. If you don't get reliable and relevant advice, your business might miss out. Whether you're looking to automate tasks or embed AI in your business processes, SAP can help. To learn more, head to sap.com/AI and stick around for expert advice on how to embrace AI with confidence. You know what's so funny, Trisha, is my dad was a lawyer. And when I was little, I told him I wanted to be a lawyer, and he brought me to his work and sat me in a chair in the corner and talked on the phone all day so I would know how painfully boring it was. And here I am in front of a computer most of the time. You're listening to How To. I'm Courtney Martin. It's summertime, y'all. It means hot nights and barbecues, maybe some time in nature or next to a pool if you're lucky. And in theory, at least, it's also a time of kind of reset. You know, work tends to ratchet down a bit. Many of us look forward to a vacation with our families or friends, maybe a little less grind, maybe a little reflection time. Resets have really been in a zeitgeist lately. Have you noticed? I mean, first, obviously, there was that whole pandemic pause thing. Now there's the Gen Z-led pushback on hustle culture that has everyone rethinking work. And a lot of people are talking about sabbaticals. Sounds great, right? A little time off to reconnect with yourself and your life goals without the constant ding of Slack messages or email nudges. But unless you're a tenured professor, how the heck do you actually pull it off? Well, our listener this week had the same question.
My name is Trisha. I am 32 years old, and I have gravitated towards the legal field in some capacity or another, but it's kind of been on accident.
Trisha is a paralegal for a busy attorney in a small law firm, and she says a lot of the work slides downhill and ends up on her desk.
I am at a point in my current position, in my role, where I kind of am ready to resign without really any kind of safety net, just for my own, mental health and my own stability.
The job isn't just stressful, it's also a bit soul-crushing.
Yeah, somehow I ended up here, and I don't really feel passionate about what I do. I see other people who, they're happy to go to work because it is something that they're passionate about, and I just kind of wish that I had that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I've often thought jealousy is such a powerful indicator because it's often not about like that person in particular, but about what they have that you don't have. So will you tell us about like one of your friends whose professional life makes you jealous?
Yeah, actually, I'm a bit jealous of my husband. He's been in his role for, I want to say, a little over 2 years, and it's very supportive, very collaborative. So I'm just sitting here thinking, well, you have a great support system when you go to work. And when I go to work, I don't.
Yeah. When did you first realize that you needed a break?
I want to say about a month ago. I actually injured my knee, and I wasn't able to walk. So I had to deplete some of my PTO, and I came back and there was a stack of papers on my chair for things for me to get back. And there wasn't really a transition of here's what's happened since you were gone. It's just, here you go. Keep going. Definitely not a get well card.
Ugh, I hate that. Okay. I just want to ask you a little bit more about who you were when you were younger, because I feel like that really helps us gain insight into where your passion might lie. You feel like this profession has kind of chosen you and you haven't chosen it. So let's go back to a time when you were choosing, when you were a little girl. What was the kind of stuff you just loved to do that you would get like totally absorbed in?
Oh my gosh. I always said that I wanted to be like a singer or an actress. And I would put on performances for like my parents and my grandparents. So I kind of wanted to be a little star. So now I'm stuck in, behind the scenes in an office wondering where the heck did I go wrong? How can I be creative while also being productive is kind of where my mind is stuck right now.
That makes a lot of sense. DJ, I'm sure you've never heard a story like this where someone's stuck in a job they didn't really choose, but sort of chose them, right?
No, first time. No, a lot of things, Trisha, resonate from, I've done hundreds of interviews with folks who've taken sabbaticals. And I think, first of all, I just want to congratulate you for having the courage to get towards the precipice and actually take time off without knowing what you would do afterwards. I think that's really courageous. And you're also listening to the signals that you're feeling around work and your identity and yourself, which is more the exception than the norm. So I just want to give yourself a little bit of grace for getting there.
That's DJ DiDonna. He teaches entrepreneurship at Harvard Business School and used to be an entrepreneur himself before he got burned out and found a way to, you guessed it, take a sabbatical. That experience was so transformational that he decided to learn all he could about the practice of taking a break from work. A few years ago, he founded an organization called the Sabbatical Project, and he is the perfect person to answer Trisha's questions.
There's a saying that life makes sense looking backwards, but you have to solve it going forwards, right? And so you're at this point where you might not realize what your story is going to be, but you'll figure it out and you'll look back and it'll make sense. Just having to figure it out going forwards with so much uncertainty is tough.
It is tough. But on today's episode, we're going to see if we can help Trisha reorient her life in a more fulfilling direction by taking a sabbatical. And while we understand not everyone has the luxury to take unpaid leave from a job, it's actually not as hard as you think, and the upside can be life-changing. Stay with us.
When you hear a good idea, it's natural to do a double take. Well, that's what you might do when you hear Discover will automatically double the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. Wait, what? Yep, double the cash back is something so good you might do a triple take. Get rewarded no matter who you are or how much you spend with Discover. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
This podcast is brought to you by Slate Studios and SAP. AI is moving so fast. If you don't get reliable and relevant advice, your business might miss out. Welcome to Dear Artie, an advice column from SAP, where we tackle the tricky questions at the intersection of AI and business. Let's meet our expert.
Hi, I'm Ian Khan. I'm a technology futurist, speaker, and author, and I love to help organizations measure their current state of readiness for an AI-driven world. I'm excited to dive into today's question.
Dear Artie, our finance team is top-notch, but small. How can AI support them? Signed, Financially Drained.
Well, financially drained, a lot is happening in finance and AI, and the possibilities are endless. First of all, AI can help your finance team analyze massive amounts of financial data faster than any human or a team of people could do. Second, it can help perform functions on data through algorithms. This can connect different systems together and really simplify decision-making for your finance team. And last but not least, AI can help reduce the time needed for data to provide insights so that your leaders can make faster decisions.
Embrace AI with confidence. Head to sap.com/AI to learn more.
Before DJ DiDonna took a sabbatical, it wasn't really obvious that he would ever need one. In fact, he thought he'd found his dream job.
I had a little bit of a different story where I feel like I identified exactly what I wanted to do. I went to grad school wanting to do something that made a positive difference in people's lives. And I was able to find research from some professors that helps people get access to finance in emerging markets. And so it checked all my boxes. And so I packed up my suitcase and went to Africa and Asia and Latin America, having this kind of experience that I always wanted. Then about 6 years in, I started to become very unhappy. And so I didn't really know what to do, and I didn't know what was on the other side, but I too kind of dragged myself along long enough to feel like I needed to make a big change. And so without knowing what was on the other side, I set off for 4 months. I had a lot of self-doubt about whether it was the right move to leave. And, what if the company doesn't exist anymore without me? What if it does really well without me? But over the course of 4 months, I spent a lot of time in nature. I really wanted to invest in my spiritual side. So I did this like Buddhist pilgrimage in Japan. I also did some pretty mundane, normal things like, helping family members move and remodeling my kitchen and things like that. I was able to get the perspective and say, wow, like my body and my mind were sending me a signal. I actually needed to be doing something different. And I felt that like confidence and optimism and creativity around figuring out what the next chapter was going to be.
I kind of love your stories side by side, you guys, because it's like Trisha felt like her job chose her. She didn't have a lot of control, and now she's at this juncture. DJ felt like he had a lot of control and chose his job, and he still ended up at this juncture. There's something just like freeing about the idea that whether you know what the hell you're doing or not, you're going to come to a point where you have to reevaluate, and it just sort of normalizes the idea of taking this kind of pause. Will you, DJ, define what the heck a sabbatical is and what distinguishes it from other kinds of time off?
I got back from my sabbatical having felt like something pretty dramatic happened in my life. Now, obviously, to take a vacation is great and taking a longer vacation is better. But the degree to which I changed and was able to kind of like re-enter my routine life different was reflected in the conversations I had with every single person who had taken this kind of extended leave. A sabbatical is really a very specific thing historically that university professors had done. The first sabbatical was in 1890 at Harvard University. And like, why would we as kind of business people or folks outside of academia call it a sabbatical? It's, I think, a way to lend that same kind of prestige and importance and kind of demarcate that we're doing something special. The definition that we kind of came up with is 3 parts. It's extended leave away from routine work with intention. So how long is extended? I would argue that it's got to be at least 2 months, preferably 4 to 9. Routine work, that means you can't do your job. You can't do like independent consulting that looks like your job. So you talk about, singing and being an actress. Like if you actually went in and did performances and plays, that would be fun for you. It would be work, but not your routine job. So you can still do something that looks like work. And then the intention piece is around you actually giving yourself the time and space to make it sacred and not just move on to the next job and actually do something different from regular work.
How does that feel, Trisha, that 3-part description? Is that what you're longing for?
Yeah, I knew I needed some kind of reset, something that would help me figure out what I want to do and not what I feel like is external pressures telling me what I should be doing.
That's beautiful. And one of the things you're facing that, so many people face is the financial constraint of this. Like when DJ talks about 2 to 9 months, I'm assuming this would have to be an unpaid sabbatical. How is that feeling to you?
It is definitely terrifying. The thought of choosing to not be employed, considering I have, had a steady job since I was 17.
Yeah, I mean, so there's the psychological aspect of it, and then there's the actual financial aspect. And I think psychologically, Trisha, what I hear you saying is the same thing that I thought, which is the concept of taking more than 2 weeks off in a row was terrifying. I thought I would disappear. I thought I would go into debt. And what you realize is from the outside looking in, if you took 6 months off, people, when you came back, they'd be like, oh, wow, it's already been 6 months. Once you give yourself permission to do it, it'll feel totally fine. And so as far as like how people do it, I think about the metaphor of a regular dental check-in instead of an emergency root canal. Like because you've gotten to the point where you're burnt out, feel like you're dragging yourself into work every day, you probably want to take it tomorrow, right? And so when you have to take something tomorrow, it's a lot more difficult to to line up the savings and to do some of the things, renting out your house or, making plans that would make it less expensive. So for sure, because it's not a regular practice in our society, we tend to wait until the last minute till we can't take it any longer. And that's when it becomes even more expensive, as opposed to saying, I'm going to save up for the next 5 years, so it's not as big of a financial hit. The good news is, though, that from my interviews and our research, what we find is because you've been at the same employee for a while, if you decided to come back in the same field, you'd probably be getting a higher rate of pay, which would end up paying for some of your sabbatical. But again, you're kind of pre-sabbatical Trisha right now. You might get into a situation where you're making way less money, but you're way happier, and it's a totally different conversation. So I feel like you got to get yourself to that place where you can reevaluate what you want to do and what the trade-off is for your happiness and fulfillment.
Listen, it's understandable if this sabbatical stuff sounds financially untenable. Though employer-provided sabbaticals are still rare, some academic institutions, law firms, and even nonprofits increasingly provide them. These wise institutions understand that investing in a pause for their employees means less burnout and more loyalty in the long run. But even if you aren't lucky enough to have a paid sabbatical, there are ways to get creative about how you weather it financially. Whether that means squirreling away a little money in the lead up, asking for a loan, or even selling some stuff you've got lying around. See our recent yard sale episode. And as we heard, you might actually prevent a future financial crisis by taking some time off now and realigning with your true purpose.
And so there's a lot of constraints, obviously, if you have kids, compared to what you would do if you were just single, or, if your partner could take a sabbatical or not. So everyone's sabbatical is different. And I think in general, how I think about it, Trisha, is like you want to make sure to do the healing part first. So like jumping directly into something without giving yourself a little bit of a break, do something that's out of your brain and all of this kind of paralegal work and into your body, your hands. Now, you mentioned kind of acting. Do you have any hobbies like yoga or ceramics or anything that are also kind of like using your body? Or would you like really want to get into some sort of like acting that would get you out of your head and into your physical self?
There's local civic theaters that do a lot of open casting calls, and I've always wanted to go and audition.
Amazing. What else is on your list? Like, do you have things you want to read or stuff you want to watch, people you want to visit?
Yeah, I have a husky puppy that we adopted last year from the shelter. She has a ton of energy. She's part of the reason why I ended up getting injured. And I would love to do a lot more of trick and agility work with her. She would be amazing at that. And I used to bake a lot, and I haven't done that in such a long time. I used to, do macarons and decorated designs on cakes, and I miss that.
It sounds like you got a pretty full slate. So, you're getting away from what you were doing normally, filling the creative piece. And I think that I would definitely recommend keeping a journal. I find it's easier to keep a journal when I'm doing things that aren't my normal life because there's something to write about. It's like a gift to your future self around just seeing how the evolution of my thoughts is changing over time. So I think you really want to capture this feeling and experience you're having at work so that your future self can take that into account when you're trying to decide what to do and how to come back into working.
I'm just thrilled by this version of your sabbatical, Trisha, that you just laid out for us. It's like you're like a Renaissance woman all of a sudden, which is such a contrast to like you sitting at the desk at your paralegal job. I loved that picture you painted. And it sounded so embodied. Like, I think a piece of this is just about the profound disembodiment of modern work and how so many of us sit in front of our computers all day long.
Yeah, I always felt some kind of pressure to improve my situation or improve where I'm at. Don't drop out of, high school, don't drop out of college, keep going. And so I've kind of wanted to do that, but I want to garden and I want to work on the yard and get my hands dirty and I want to tear down walls. And yeah, that's definitely something that I have been disconnected from.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like, first of all, that list of stuff does not in any way, I think, to the supermajority of people sound like you're like blowing money away or like taking some like super expensive vacation and being irresponsible. It sounds like a list of like very human things that we just don't have time for given our work lives, right? And so, getting that kind of background voice out of your head and just getting it out of your system a little bit. I mean, maybe you find that I'd like to, integrate more creativity in my life. Your story around feeling like you never made an intentional decision about what you wanted to do, that is the most common story that I hear, even among my MBA students at Harvard, which is you get to a place where you're either moving away from what your parents did or towards, away from what your peers are doing or towards. And like people look up and say, like, I don't know if I've actually made an intentional career decision. And so again, the act of dipping out of the water a little bit and understanding that this isn't working for you and you want to try something different for a little bit is abnormal in a great way. Let's say all of those things that you want to do takes 6 months on like the high end, right? If you take 6 months off every 10 years, that's just 5% of your life. Like no one is on their deathbed saying, I really wish I would have worked 5% more.
Hell no. But it's weirdly hard to remember that. Just last year, I took my own little sabbatical to recenter on the kind of stuff that really matters. Now you might be wondering, did I spend more time with my children? The answer is no. Did my ego die a slow death with no listener or reader feedback? Stay tuned to find out. This episode is brought to you by Defender. For those who embrace the impossible, the Defender 110 is up for the adventure. This iconic vehicle has been redefined with thoroughly modern design. The exterior is reimagined with compelling proportions and precise detailing, and the interior is built with robust materials and integrity. The Defender capability is legendary, whether you're facing off-road challenges or harsh weather conditions. Built for the modern explorer, the Defender 110 lets you go further and do more. And cargo capacity means more room for your gear. To drive the Defender is to explore with greater confidence. Powerful innovations like the intuitive driver display and award-winning infotainment system keep you connected. Innovative camera technologies deliver unobstructed views and effortless maneuvering. Ready for a wide range of adventures, the Defender family features the two-door Defender 90, the Defender 110, and the Defender 130, which seats up to 8. A vehicle made to go further, the Defender 110. Learn more at landroverusa.com/Defender.
When you hear a good idea, it's natural to do a double take. Well, that's what you might do when you hear Discover will automatically double the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. Wait, what? Yep, double the cash back is something so good you might do a triple take. Get rewarded no matter who you are or how much you spend with Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
In 1978, gay people in California faced a dire threat.
Proposition 6, the Briggs Initiative.
The teaching profession is riddled with the homosexual element.
John Briggs is going to fire every gay and lesbian school teacher in the state of California.
I'm Christina Cauterucci. This season on Slow Burn, we'll explore how a nationwide backlash against gays and lesbians led to a massive showdown in California.
This was tens of thousands of pissed off gay guys and lesbians roaring down Market Street.
With so much at stake, young people became activists.
We've got to fight back. We can't let this happen in California.
And activists became leaders.
My name is Harvey Milk, and I'm here to recruit you.
Slow Burn, Season 9, Gays Against Briggs. Listen to the whole season now, wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back with our listener Trisha and sabbatical expert DJ DiDonna. Trisha's longing for some time off reminded me of my own feelings about a year ago, right before I took my first sabbatical.
Courtney, what ultimately kind of got you through that? What was your experience?
Well, I took 2 months and mine was unpaid. And actually I found really reckoning with the money I was like leaving on the table was helpful for keeping me disciplined about the sabbatical, because I just felt like this is a lot of money. It really freaks me out. Like, I'm really going to honor my intention with this sabbatical. I have small kids. I have a 7 and 10-year-old, and I actually did not want to spend more time with them, DJ, which was a very funny thing. People would be like, oh, you're going to spend more time with your kids? I'm like, not at all. Because I'm one of those parents who, because I have a flexible job, I spend a lot of time with my kids. So that was not my goal. I have, written a weekly column for like 15 years. And so the idea of stepping out of being a public person and just listening to my own internal voice and not doing it for others felt really important for me. And mine really was deeply about physicality too. I like gardened badly. I tried to bake, often badly. So that was good. I just got really in touch with how mediocre I am at most domestic arts. One of the things about the unanchored quality was, and I think this was kind of what you were getting at also, DJ, was like really wrestling with what I have decided makes me a worthy person. So it felt quite disarming and kind of spiritual to be like, can I consider myself worthy if I'm, gardening badly? And that was not easy for me.
Yeah. I mean, right now I feel disconnected to the product of work. I put in all this work and I don't have anything really to show for it other than my paycheck later. But, if I were to garden, I might have something that I can pick out and eat from later.
I think it's about listening to yourself and trying to figure out what works, right? The good thing about your sabbatical is within the boundaries, you can control what you do. And so, as opposed to work, where if it doesn't feel good, you either have to keep doing it or find another job. And so I kind of think of it as this is this experiment that you're running. And if you find that, baking really drives you crazy, then you know that. And you're kind of investing in what I call regret insurance, where like you don't want to look back and say like, I wonder what would have happened had I like really invested in theater. And then maybe you do it and you're preparing for lines and you can't focus and you can't remember and it's just not fun for you and it's pressure packed. Then you'll know. Courtney, you talk about like this experience of like feeling like, what is it like when you're not productive? It's kind of an audition and a sample for retirement. Like we're all aiming to retire at some point, right? And so you're giving yourself a little bit of a taste of what retirement could look like. And you're doing it early so that you can kind of adjust and be like, oh man, I'd really like to, save up more money so I can be closer to the water, or I'd like to be in a position where I can do acting or whatnot. You got to be observant about how something feels. And I don't want to like recommend a therapist specifically for you, but I think therapy is going to be like a great time to deal with all this stuff as it's bubbling up.
And I know you really had a super shot of awe in your travels in Japan and stuff like that. Will you tell us one of the coolest moments from that experience?
First of all, it's just kind of nice to do something that sounds impossibly big, right? It was like, 800 miles, but my day job was just walking. And when you think about it, if you're like, I'm going to work 200 days this year, that sounds like a lot of work, but that's what we do, right? We just kind of do it one day at a time. I think the most important lesson I had was that when you take yourself out of your normal day-to-day life and you put yourself in a very different life, you see that there's a lot of stuff that wasn't the work. It was actually you, and you can't escape it. And the sooner you realize that a lot of things that drive you crazy are actually like part of your personality, and you're just going to swap it out if you go to another job and another place, I think the sooner you can actually work on that stuff. Learn to love yourself for who you are, learn to treat yourself a little bit more kindly, and not just think about being productive all the time. So those are the lessons from my time off.
Trisha, is there anything that you're most worried about in terms of having that blank slate of a calendar, or does that actually sound kind of awesome?
I mean, it sounds both awesome because I could fill my day without anything, and also it sounds terrifying because I would want to fill my day with everything. But I struggle a lot with feeling guilty about whatever I'm doing. If I'm sitting down for a certain amount of time, I feel guilty because I could be doing X, Y, and Z. And I am also terrified of being in a sabbatical, taking a couple weeks off and thinking I could be at work making money so that I don't have to worry about these things instead.
Yeah.
And I'm scared about how I would deal with that kind of guilt. I think it mostly stems from wanting to feel like I am productive and I am doing something and not just spending and wasting that time. I would definitely feel that disparity, if my husband comes home and he's exhausted and I have all this energy because I didn't, and I was doing things that energized me and made me feel great about myself, and he didn't.
DJ, how do you deal with that guilt? Any recommendations?
A couple things I would think about doing. The first is set a calendar reminder for some period of time that you know it's okay to be off for. So let's say 2 months, 6 weeks. It's funny, Courtney, when you said 2 months, in our research, it usually took folks from 6 to 8 weeks to fully feel like they were themselves again. So Trisha, if you could set, however long you're going to be able to take, set a time and say, until this time, I'm going to just experiment and live in the way that I want to live on a day-to-day basis, and I'm not going to judge myself. And then starting on this date, now I'm going to look at the things that I did and be like, okay, what brought me joy? What made me unhappy? Now I learned a little thing. I'm going to adjust a little bit and go from there. Think about summer breaks when we were kids, right? Yeah. There really wasn't really that expectation in being productive. You just give yourself the permission to have one more summer break without worrying about what the productivity metric is. You've earned it. You've been working for a decade. You've done all the right things. As far as how to navigate with your partner if they can't take time off, ideally, at least y'all could align for one vacation together. But if we're doing this correctly, what we're doing when we're making ourselves kind of feel better is you're actually giving a gift to your partner, because you're taking yourself that's probably maybe a little bit more difficult to be around when you're not happy at work. It's hard to bring that positive energy when you're drained at work and dreading the next day. And you're going to make yourself feel better, which is going to feel better to your partner. You also hopefully will be able to give this gift back to them later, right? You get some time off this time. Maybe next time they get some time off at some point, maybe you can take it together. And I think it will ultimately benefit both of you.
Okay, so this is really important. If you're going to take a sabbatical, think like a scientist to stave off the guilt and anxiety. You're running an experiment on your own life, basically, right? You're trying to understand what really lights you up. To do that, you need a set amount of time to explore and a hypothesis about a few things that might reconnect you to your purpose. Make it official by putting it in your calendar, and then remind yourself of the commitment when the self-talk turns sour. The experiment won't be valid if you don't give it real time and space.
I just had one question for DJ. Would it be advisable to, at some point, do some kind of part-time job where it's something completely different than what I have been doing? Or is it sabbatical, just do not even think about trying to be hired until a certain point?
Yeah, listen, we all have constraints, right? And so what I would try to encourage is, can you make as much time sacred in this non-workspace as possible? Folks would be like, well, I'm just going to take on one consulting project. It'll just be a few hours a week. And it's amazing how that few hours a week expands. Because you're thinking, what hypothesis are you testing with that part-time work? Is it oh, I'm going to work in the service industry, or, oh, I'm going to work at the national park, something where you're learning something else about yourself that you can use either to inform what makes you come alive, or what kind of job you'd want to do, or what kind of skill set you'd want to do in the future. So could be training. You might want to get trained for some skill set that can help you get a job. It might feel energizing to you. Do you have an idea of what else you would want to do? Or are you totally in oh man, I kind of went down this cul-de-sac of legal work and I want to totally get out of it? Do you have a sense?
Maybe I want to do something different. Maybe I want to just, work part-time at some, bakery, or, learning how to sew or something. I don't know what that would look like, but just wondering, just so I could still bring in some income just so that I don't have that financial constraint while still trying to figure out what exactly it is that I do want to do.
Yeah. So on those decision points, like if you wanted to bake and you can get a job at a bakery and it would make you feel better financially and you would pick up some skills, like that could be best case scenario. Or it could be a nightmare where you're like, oh man, I took something I love and now I'm like, have to go every day and make the same cookie over and over again. But that's information. Like you're learning something about yourself where you'd be like, well, I thought I might want to work at a bakery. Turns out I don't. And that's great. Or the other approach is to take something where you know you can make money, the most money in the least amount of time, and still keep a few days a week or a few hours a week, more than you do now to like continue that experiment. So I would just say, like exactly how you framed it, just try to protect some block of time that's significant, like say a couple months at minimum if possible, and then start experimenting on that like job and bringing money back in. Because I think that sacredness of that first 2 months will be really important and you can't replicate that. One thing you brought up that I think is really important is this concept of like, how do you create the space? And like Trisha, so it sounds like you might have like folks in your life that might judge you for taking time off and like amplify some of your own concerns. You might have people, this happens all the time, where you tell people that you're taking off and all of a sudden people are like, oh, I know how I would feel if I was in that situation. I want to help this person. So I'm going to like get them jobs and, like help them like apply for stuff. One way to create this space is actually not to tell people that that you're like quitting your job, not to tell people that you're taking off. If you want to have your own kind of protected space, if you really want to have like the supportive community and have folks kind of like knowing and that kind of stuff, you can tell folks, but just remember that's a choice you can make. The time will fly by. So just feel free to turn that switch or not.
I never would have thought about that, DJ. And I did find people were a little bit like disdainful. Like some people were just like, oh, a sabbatical, like must be nice. Because I think some people do consider it an elite thing. Understandably, I mean, you have to be able to take time off financially if like us, Trisha, you don't have a paid sabbatical program. So that is a privilege. But I did end up thinking to myself, like the only thing more annoying than being someone on a sabbatical is being someone feeling like guilty on a sabbatical. Like, let me just enjoy this thing and not get mired in other people's responses to it. Because it really stems from people's own feeling of deprivation that like they would like to have this kind of experience. And one of the cool things you can do once you've had a sabbatical is be a mentor and a source for others to talk about like how you made it happen, and be very honest about the financial trade-offs. DJ, on that note, I know there are some foundations that are wise enough to offer nonprofit leaders sabbaticals that you can apply for, but are there any other sectors where you can apply for funding from like a third party if your work doesn't give you a paid sabbatical?
Yeah, I wish I had better news. We're in this place where it's just not that well supported right now. I mean, think about like parental leave obviously has a long way to go, but where parental leave was 20 years ago. We're at the very beginning here. So if an employer wants to offer it, great. Most employers don't. My suspicion, Trisha, is that you'll try to take off as much as you can this time. And then based on the experience, you'll be like, oh man, all right, let's like make a plan so that 7 years from now, 10 years from now, we can take even longer and just prioritize it because you know how valuable that time is away from routine work. It's not going to be your last sabbatical and it's going to be great. So I'm super excited.
Yay, I love that. Wow. Yeah, the pace alone is such a profound teacher, right, DJ? Just like the slowing down. Because I think I can get in a mode where I see multitasking as some kind of badge of honor. And it's like my whole being gets sped up to that multitasking mode when you go on sabbatical or you take a vacation where your kind of physiology has to like slow down and reconstitute itself. One of the things I'm really hoping for you, Trisha, is just that feeling of like slowing down and reintegrating.
I'm not feeling like there's 12 tabs open at all times, even when I'm not in front of a computer.
No one on their deathbed was like, I wish I'd opened 3 more tabs on my desktop. Trisha, do you have any final questions for DJ, and has this felt helpful?
This has been so helpful. I didn't know how to understand and structure what I needed. I knew I needed to do something. I knew something needed to change, and I just didn't know how to explain it. So thank you, DJ, for helping me understand what it is that I will need.
That's awesome. I mean, you got to the point where you were listening to yourself and you reached out for help. That's really impressive, and I'm really excited for your journey.
Thank you.
Yes, and what's your husky's name?
Her name is Evanescence. We call her Evie for short.
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. Will you please send us a picture?
Yes, absolutely. I can send you a picture.
Okay.
She's a mess.
Oh, she's going to be so excited when she hears you're taking a sabbatical. Oh, she did send a picture, and it was divine. So happy for Evie that she gets to hang out with Trisha more. Thank you, Trisha, so much for sharing your story with us, and to DJ DiDonna for all of his wonderful advice. We'll add a link to the Sabbatical Project in the show notes. Do you have a life experiment you'd like to run? Send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001. We might just have you on the show. And if you found today's episode helpful, please share it with a friend. That helps us help more people. How To is produced by Rosemary Belson with Kevin Bendis and Sara McCrea. Joel Meyer is senior editor, and Derek John is executive producer. Senior technical director is Merritt Jacob, who also composed our theme music. Charles Duhigg created the show. Carvel Wallace is my co-host. I'm Courtney Martin. Thanks for listening.
When you hear a good idea, it's natural to do a double take. Well, that's what you might do when you hear Discover will automatically double the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. Wait, what? Yep, double the cash back is something so good you might do a triple take. Get rewarded no matter who you are or how much you spend with Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.